welcome to the Bigger Truth Show. I am Scott McMahon, and so excited for today's show. And I've got Jeff and Shannon. I'm going to go ahead and bring them on with the MG show, and we're going to be talking about the ReAwaken tour and kind of how it started, and just kind of pull together our knowledge from you guys have direct knowledge, and you guys have some whistleblowers from inside of that world, and I've got some whistleblowers from inside of that world. So I think we can come together and share some really valuable information and insight. The reason why the ReAwaken tour matters, in my view, is, and it matters a great deal, is this was it started in 2021. And it was really what brought and formed the foundation of what we know now as the Flynn Network. We talked in earlier shows about how you guys were involved and brought into the fold of the Flynn's Q network, and that the Q influencer network, and how he kind of took over that. But then he, with the help of Clay Clark, he really kind of expanded and beyond Q, and bringing in and creating this kind of Christian nationalist. It really meets a lot of the objective criteria of a cult, and around all of these events that he did, these huge speaking events, and you guys were actually at a bunch of those. So
yes,
thank you guys. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Bigger Truth Show, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. And first, let's give a big round of applause for Scott. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And wow, guys, settle down. It's just Scott McMahon, guys. But thank you, Scott. What's cool, though, is that, Scott, I didn't know you. We just saw some of your research. But what's interesting is that you, me, Shady, other people in this movement, like Script Keeper, and it came from all different parts of the web, if you will, and found the same result, that General Flynn is not who you think he is.
Yep. And that actually, I think that was the headline of the very first report that I did. General Flynn is not who he says he is, and that's, I think that's really important, because and this isn't just like an opinion. I didn't have an opinion one way or another of Flynn when I started. I just started looking at the evidence and looking at what his track record is, and seeing that there is an enormous variation and discrepancy between who he says he is and what he actually does, and the outcomes of his actions. And I think it's becoming more and more clear to more people that what Flynn is doing right now is a deliberate effort to harm Trump and the Republican Party. And it's through narratives, it's through all kinds of ways. And I think a lot of this we can point to the ReAwaken tour as a place, kind of a seedbed where a lot of this started.
Yeah. So, Scott, real quick, just turn your mic up just a little bit more. People are saying that you're kind of going in and out a little bit.
All right.
You might want to check his mic cable. Check that cable. I heard a little bit of interference. It sounded
all right.
Yeah.
Just to make sure. Thanks so much, Scott, for having us on. And yes, it is a little bit of an interesting time to be alive right now, because what we're seeing is a really an honest split. And I think a lot of people that probably follow your show got a real good glimpse of it last week, of like, which people are the ones that are supporting Donald Trump, and which people are the ones that are acting like there's something wrong with him. And we've been highlighting this on the MG show to share with you the idea of like, who are the players. And there's really an aspect of this that goes to say, no matter what Donald Trump does, these people are not going to be satisfied with it, Scott. And then we're seeing that really play out right now, because they're acting as if things that Donald Trump is clearly doing, he's not doing. And they're acting like things he clearly would never do, he should be doing, which are both just absolutely like what I would consider off the reservation.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And they are, it seems like, and I think you guys showed on your show, and I've shown on X, what Ivan Ricklin was doing even just this last weekend, with at this Thrive in 25 conference. And if you watch his entire speech, it was like 40 minutes or 45 minutes.
Ugh.
And thank
you for watching it for us, by the way.
Oh, it's painful. I mean, he thinks he's this, like, oh my gosh, the way that he talks, he tries to engage in this, like, asking the audience questions. just like trying really, really hard to be larger than life, and it's obnoxious. But the worst part is the way that he engages in emotional manipulation. I mean,
Right.
he was just deliberately inciting the crowd to violence. I mean,
To be angry.
anger, and ultimately to violence, and using violent language, talking about using an ice pick he says you can't just poke the bear with your finger, you got to use an ice pick, and where on a man would an ice pick hurt the most, and where on the woman would an ice pick hurt the most. Like, this is sick stuff. I mean, he's a psychopath. And then he talks about the eyeballs. I mean, and then he says, I'm just trying to get the creative juices flowing. And the two organizers of the event came to me afterwards on X, responding saying, oh, he's just talking about animals, but really we don't advocate harming animals in any way.
Did they really say that?
Yeah, well, then why
Long post,
Ivan
yeah.
Raiklin at your event?
Right.
Boy, oh boy, that's a stretch.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, but the whole event was aimed towards that. I mean, every speaker was aimed towards that. And we've seen a lot of narratives recently about, trying to make people remember all of the harm that was done on COVID, talking about ivermectin, talking about remdesivir. There's been an increased discussion of that, because that's something that rightfully I think a lot of us are angry about. And they use these things that we're angry about to harm us.
That's exactly what they're doing. That's a great one. It's great that you say that, because people need to hear that and understand that there's a level of being upset that's rational and normal and legitimate, of like, okay, you're upset about something. But then there's another level, and you can clearly see that's one of the big problems we have with the way things went down on January the 6th, because this is exactly what they did. They took the way that people were upset, and then they weaponized that. This is things that they've learned for decades and decades within the manipulation of these intelligence operations, and in 50, 60 different countries that they've initiated the coup in the country. These are the exact same things that they do to the local people there. General Flynn and his horde of minions out there online, they're the experts at that. They did it in Iraq, they did it in Afghanistan, and they're doing it right now.
Mm-hmm. Super point, because we're going to get to the ReAwaken tour, but I don't think you can really understand the ReAwaken tour without understanding the way that Flynn was trained and the way that he executed military intelligence operations. And he was trained at Fort Bragg. He started in 1981 at Fort Bragg, which was where and Michael Aquino and Paul Vallely wrote Mind War in 1980, and that was kind of like the unofficial kind of it was the desired doctrine of military intelligence. And most of us think of military intelligence as information gathering. We want to gather information, we want to know what our enemies are going to do to us, and that's important. But from what I've been seeing just in my research, that's actually a very small part of military intelligence. The much larger part is creating intelligence, creating narratives, and using narratives actually in place of bombs and missiles in order to as weapons of warfare. And that's what they're doing against us.
Scott, it was interesting. So we were talked about our Discord days back with you and, one of our first or second shows. And in Discord, we were all like, they were creating the narrative that Flynn was a hero with the Q posts, and we were buying into it. And so we created all these narratives. And I said, hey, General Flynn followed me, like, oh my gosh. And that was 4/18/2018. And so Flynn followed me. I said, well, why don't you go make a nice post about Flynn and he'll follow you too. He was collecting information. They were setting up the narrative. We fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. No more, pal.
Right. Well, and that's you get somebody, especially when you start getting attention from somebody that
that was his network in Discord, making that narrative and making us think that it was great that General Flynn followed us.
Right. Yeah, because we just assume that rightfully, I think, as we're normal, good people, people who tell the truth themselves. They assume that people are who they say they are.
And just to maybe add a little something to that, from my personal perspective, as far as like coming to talk about Q, deciding to broadcast things of that nature, this will be like the first time in like my lifetime, literally in my adult lifetime, I started digging into conspiracy stuff whenever I was very, very young, that I had any respect for anybody in the Army. And I don't mean that by people who serve, but I mean that by people who are elected to be the leaders of the army, the generals, if you will, the upper crust, the echelons of the trained, the elite of the military establishment are of the same families that established the globalist order that has been working for 100 years to undermine the country. And so for me, it was a very big anomaly to even accept the idea that, oh, okay, well, there is a general who we know what the army general, we understood mind war, we understood psi war, understood Valalay and Aquino well before Q.
Yep.
But the connections is what we were skipped over. So in other words, it was almost like, it was interjected in a way. Q said plants need water, meaning that the 4 people on that post were like associated with being planted in Trump's administration. But the drops were being spun to say that Flynn had implanted himself as a poison pill for them. The exact inversion of what happened, which is so perfect to see it now. You can see it clear as day. But then in that moment, we were all fooled.
Mm-hmm. And that's the exact operation that he's done over and over again. I mean, that's what he did in the health and freedom movement. He and other people that he controlled and went into the health and freedom movement. They took it over. They became a poison pill. They made it something. I mean, that should have been the response to COVID. And how overbearing our government was to us all around the world, in this country especially. That should have been an incredibly uniting factor. That's something that should have brought us all together. Just in appreciation of our freedoms and our Constitution, and instead, it became a bunch of crazies, really. And that's exactly what he did with the election integrity effort, and injecting deliberate lies. And we've talked about that quite a bit. It's exactly what he's doing within state Republican parties. Mm-hmm. And through the ReAwaken tour, that's a big part of what they're doing to churches even. And it's really it's very, very unfortunate, and people are starting to wake up, and that's wonderful. And you guys have done a lot to do that, and your audience has done a lot to do that. And I think we've got a long ways to go. But,
we do have a lot of work because, again, it's an echo chamber that they're in, and we're unfortunately stuck in it. So we're like the stepchild that nobody likes or whatever, the friend that nobody likes, it's stuck in their little network because we don't like them. And, we're stuck in this network because, Elon it has been exposed as well. And he's in the post about subsidies, and Trump says, and those playing the game, no one gets a free pass, and boom, there you go. He said it today. Don't play this game with me, Elon. So we're still not uncensored because I think Elon knows what's coming for him as well. We talked about that on today's show, but I think that we're all in this echo chamber and we're stuck in here. And I don't want to be in the Flynn network echo chamber.
Right.
And I also think that, we're going to talk about the ReAwaken tour. I think that the ReAwaken tour was literally developed to subvert, divert, and distract the Great Awakening that Q was inspiring, because what Q was inspiring was something different than what's going on here. Q was inspiring your ability to dig into stuff and learn it on your own. Here's a bunch of questions. You tell me, you come back and you generate what it is that you think about it. That's completely different than what we're seeing here. Mm-hmm. What we're seeing here is a kettled mindset, a group think. You said cult. It could very well be considered a cult because simply, why am I not allowed to disagree with this guy? Why am I not allowed to disagree with General Flynn or think that he is anything that I want to think about him and still be a Trump supporter and MAGA? Ivan Ranklin goes out there, his right-hand man, and says these horrible things. I would never send somebody associated with the MG show. I wouldn't let anybody that's associated with the MG show act like that in public. I'd be like, you're not associated with me. I don't think like that, because I would stand up and I wouldn't stand up for Donald Trump in situations where I didn't think he deserved it also, Scott. And I think that a lot of people skip over that give criticism to what it is that, people on our side do.
Right. It's interesting you said that about Q, because there's, I think that, I actually wrote the same kind of thing today. I think that the answer ultimately is being able to think for ourselves and reclaiming our mental sovereignty in a world where we are just bombarded with not just falsehoods, but deliberate deceit. And that's really what it is. We are being deceived by so many, and it's not just not being who you say you are, but it's twisting truths, partial truths, and even giving us things that are true that are deliberately timed in order to manipulate us.
That's you're hitting in something very big right there, something based in faith, and you're hitting in something, you know, that where we're all supposed to be. We're not, you're not supposed to like depend on other people. You're supposed to depend on yourself. You're supposed to sharpen your own iron to the point where your axe splits the wood, not not sharpen mine so I can use this other guy's axe. And effectively, isn't that what we're all being kind of set up to do in a scenario like this?
You know, and I notice patterns too. You know, Q said that they're going to repackage, the Q movement and make it their own on another platform. Reawaken, repackage, the Great Awakening is what Q says. Reawakening. The Flynn has the Little Flowers Advisory Board. There's a Q, and they gaslight you, and they're gaslighting me, right? Because I notice things like this. Flowers in gardens, learn hidden symbolism. What does a flower represent? What does deflower represent? Think children, think slaves, think sheep, and their thing is called the Little Flowers Advisory Board. Okay. Also, you know, they have this platform that they all congregate on called Gilded. What does it mean to be covered in gold? Another Q post. You know, they're doing it. So people like this have to tell you what they're doing through their symbolism. And if symbolism is their downfall, this guy done fell off a long time ago.
And you were saying something too, Scott, that was so brilliant. They're infecting our minds with other people's perspectives, with other people, like with things that other people think. And then all of a sudden you're seeing these things online, you're hearing them repeated. You're hearing Ivan Ranklin, you're hearing these people repeat they're saying these things like from this position, like you would think that. But if you just take 1 second, like I made the post with your post, I'm like, no human being, thinks like that. Like you can't point to somebody in your family that would say something that crazy ever in the history of politics in your whole life. No one would ever say anything like that.
That's right. So I think that's a pretty good segue into the Reawaken tour, because, you know, and this is, I think everybody's seen what's wrong image.
Oh,
we'll get to that image in a little bit.
Okay.
Sorry to scare everyone. So this is just one of the posters. You know, they're all the same. You've seen one, you've seen them all, right? And
yes.
But it was an iconic. I think, you know, Clay Clark, he has a real talent for marketing and for business, and he knows how to make money. But you know, and this is another thing. I don't think that, because there's a lot of people that think that this is all about the grift for Flynn. I don't think that that's the case at all. And I just want to insert this. For example, I was looking at the Fight Like a Flynn PAC. And in the last reported year, I think they raised like 1.3 million, but over 1 million of that came from Patrick Byrne. Only it was less than 300,000 that came from individual donors, and yet they really worked at raising money from these individual donors. And I think that it's the same. I haven't done a really deep dive line by line on all the donors of the America's Future, but I suspect it's very similar, where it's the vast majority of their donations come from very large donors that are close to them, and yet they really work at trying to extract money from small donors, from individual people. And you guys have done a great job showing that. Yeah, I think
they have to cover the small donors so the big donors can donate to them. I think it's the same thing that the Democrat Party does.
Yeah, there may be a part of that for sure. I also think that because it seems so weirdly important to them to get money from small donors. And so that very well may be that it's something to try to cover for these larger donors. But I also think that there's a big element of it that they're less concerned about the money, and they're more concerned, like their lust is not so much for the money as it is for our hearts, because they know that what the Bible says is true. I mean, Satan knows the Bible just as well as a believer. And the Bible says that where your treasure is, your heart is also. And I think that their lust is for our hearts and our minds.
Yeah.
And And so that is, I think, if they can give people to give money, they know that they're going to have a stronger tie to their hearts.
We got Patrick Byrne on tape saying that they want to fleece your aunt. What was it, Shade? How did it go?
That would be grandma.
Grandma.
So grandma's Social Security. We have to target grandma's Social Security. That was on their leadership council. I think, Scott, I think you're hitting into something here. And I also think that this has to do with, do you guys remember what they came out with the Act Blue thing, talking about the laundering and the way that, okay, so somebody donates money. And then because that person donated, all of a sudden, then every year they keep donating money. And then there's all these thousands of dollars donating in that name. But that person, there's nothing coming out of their bank account. So really what you need is the portal, right? You need the person, you need the individual. So you can say, okay, well, this person has donated to the Flynn Network $35. Now you could take that name and you could stick it over here. And then you can like set up this network to where it says all this funding comes in and it splinters. And then Dave, what's his name? He just gave another $35. You see, I mean, so they have the ability with these networks and these 501c4s to completely untransparently bring in as much cash as they want. And now they can split it up and make it look like it's the little guy supporting them. When all reality, guys, I mean, like their bot network on the internet's pretty strong, but they do not have any ground game. They have ground game in some of these places where Flynn is putting the political people, and you're hitting on that too. Isn't that what at the end of the day the real value is?
And Shady, remember, they're saying that that's what we're doing, right?
That's exactly, again, the inversion.
Who's paying you? We are only funded by, what little money we get from doing Rumble ads and our listeners, what I mean? And they're like, who's paying you? Because they know that they could not survive just on their small little audience. And it's smaller than you think, guys. Right. They have to use these sock accounts in order to do this.
Well, I mean, even we have Flynn today. He's like addressing our show. He's addressing our show yesterday, specifically where Jeff is telling you, we don't care. Like, you like literally, like the guy could get anointed king of the world, and I'm not going to give respect to him. He can't get it from me. I'm not like, BLM. I'm not going to say Flynn life matters. I'm sorry.
And it's because we understand who Jack Singlaub is. We understand what his foundation is.
And I know what they did.
The leadership team. We understand where he got his money. We got America's Futures raised $3.7 million. We know that they get it from all these other different places as well. We know that he usurped the Q movement with this with his taking the oath thing. We know that he's probably behind, allegedly, I gotta say allegedly, behind January 6th with Roger Stone. We know that Mary O'Neill was paid $200,300, including $148,300 in 2022, and Flynn took up to $1 million. Okay, but money that our show helped donate,
and whenever
was it also dark money financing them as well?
Sure.
And whenever we got a
job and get rid of Q,
and whenever we got associated with ReAwaken, when we were invited to ReAwaken, our idea was that we were the talent. You see, we thought we were the talent to show them what's going on. But no, nobody wanted to hear about what we had to say. That they wanted us to be there to cover their people so that they could control the narrative. And the next thing we know, we're like seeing all these people that are saying all this nonsense that they're bringing on the stage. We're like, Tori Says is like on the stage there with Patrick Byrne saying that she's holding Hunter Biden's laptop, dude. I mean, like she's literally doing that. Like that's not a joke. That was happening.
Right. Yeah, crazy.
It's crazy.
It's just there's so much crazy. And I liked what Dilly said last week when he said about the Flynn Network. He says that if you knew like just the sexual perversion and the drugs, the alcohol, it is I hear so many stories. It is so mind-blowing.
So I have a question.
How perverted.
Why aren't the digital soldiers going after Dilly?
Right.
Why is that? Why is it only my show and Shady Show? Why is it our show?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they going after Dilly? Seriously, think about it. Why are they not going after Dilly?
That's a good question.
It is a good question.
I never said anything like what Dilly said just there. I never said anything about any perversion but he did, and I'm getting attacked for calling him out on the evidence that we have on that looks really bad for General Flynn about selling nuclear tech to Saudi Arabia. Okay,
we know he did that. It's like these things. We know that his business partner was convicted. We saw the guy get convicted, and then all of a sudden, like the judge, like releases, when have you heard of that? Like, guys out there, when have you heard of a judge like coming into a guilty?
Let me finish my thought too, as well, because what I'm saying is I think Dilly is with them, to be honest. I mean, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. He hates Q, okay? That's why we're blocked. Okay, Shady's not blocked, but I am. He hates Q. He then all of a sudden, was over at Mar-a-Lago with, Roger Stone and all those people at one of those events. And he says something really nasty about General Flynn that he can't back up without any facts, with the perversions and what they do with each other, unless he can. I don't know. We don't say anything like that. We go with the facts, ma'am, just the facts, ma'am, of what we dig up. And we're attacked and Dilly's not. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I understood your point. I understand 100% what you're saying.
And that very well could be. I mean, another explanation could just be that he doesn't want to punch up. He only wants to punch down. And, because that's...
Well, the history, I can give you just a little synopsis of the Dilly history. Dilly was with us. Dilly was promoted by Praying Medic. Like Praying Medic wouldn't give us the time of day, but it was once we started talking about the bloodlines, but then he was promoting Dilly every day, built up his whole network. We all got taken down, whatever. Dilly got, after this January 6th, he got a visit by the feds. He used to live in Arizona. Got a visit by the FBI. And the next thing I know, he had moved to Georgia, and he was literally coming out against us and our show for no reason, like we unprovoked, like calling us Q-tards and saying this and this and this. Look, man,
the guy used to sell Q hats.
We read the Q drops, and we can explain things that are in the Q drops that people have questions about. It's just it's not really like some kind of cult or anything. It's just a bunch of information that we read and studied and dug into that whenever it becomes relevant, we'll talk about. That's all it is. And the next thing you know, this guy is completely like off the rail, pretending like he has nothing to do with it. And now here he is doing, what he's doing right now.
I just saw that comment. Dilly said many years ago that he was close with Michael Flynn's son. Well, Dilly said, but he didn't prove anything. Now, why aren't they attacking Dilly?
Right.
For something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think Michael Flynn Jr. would be right there going head to head with him, or Guitar Anon, or any, all these other, Sun Tzu. I mean, they've got a whole legion of people out there.
It is certainly possible. And I do believe that, even recently he's defended Roger Stone. And
Laura Loomer.
Right.
And so it could also very well be explained by they just don't want to give that any more oxygen.
And you noticed what Stone did, right? Stone sat back and said, "Stop questioning the president." You see, like he's the orchestrator. So he gets to come out and be front facing. Him and Laura Loomer. Oh, we've been defending the president, and all these other people went off the rail. It's thesis, antithesis. It's just gobbledygook.
Yep, that's what he did too with writing a book about Epstein.
Yes,
you could say, "Oh, I wrote." You can't accuse me. I wrote the book on it. Oh, yeah. So
you only attack those who you fear the most, and apparently they fear my show, you, Script, and but General Flynn literally came out and called us out today and yesterday.
Right. Well, and they also attack. They have other people, but they attack even very small accounts. I mean, they attacked me when I had like 2,500 followers. And
they literally generated an online smear campaign about a case that never came to fruition. Like, they got published in your hometown, man. I mean, like, I swear there's been some people do some nasty stuff before, but I've never seen anybody put the wrong address on a form to run for office. Good Lord. Right. You would think like that's what they did to you.
Well, and it was a house that I've owned since 2019.
Yeah, it's like not like you didn't live there.
It's ridiculous. But the weirder thing is that there were Flynn operatives that knew, and again, I was never even charged. Like there were never charges. Right. There never charges entered. And
remember, I said it that day whenever you contacted us, I was like, are there charges? Are there really? And you were like, no, there's nothing. No, there's material. I was like, let's see if that happens, because it looks like they were just. When does it ever go into the paper that there's been charges before there's charges? Like, that does not happen.
Right. But there were Flynn operatives on X that were telling me a week before I knew about it a week before the prosecutor told the local paper that there were charges when there were not. And that's how I found out about it. It was when the local paper called me. But a week before that, there were Flynn operatives on X that were telling me that I was about to get charged. How could they know that?
Because this is how the blackmail network works.
Yep.
You have to call in a marker. Like Patrick Byrne had to call in a marker to get into the White House with that meeting with Sidney. Like all of these guys, you call in a marker. You got to call your guy. Get, like the mafia. This is just like the mafia. You call down and you try to get somebody that you've got dirt on, and you make him do something that he doesn't want to do.
And his marker was that guy that did the Hunter Biden report.
Right. Ziegler.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how's that going? Like, so
burger. Like there's what.
And then Joe Flynn and Patrick Byrne, when they were together with Flynn Byrne's thing, paid for the lawyer for the gentleman that the repairman. I saw Joe Flynn on Fox News with the repairman. Why?
That's right. I forgot.
To usurp that narrative.
This is wild. This has come up. What name has come up to me just from three very different, completely unrelated people in phone conversations. I did not bring this up. They brought it up to me. Tony Bobulinski, in different contexts, just in the last 24 hours. And but Tori Morris was very much involved with the Hunter Biden laptop, and she was trying to bring two separate laptops into it. She claimed very early on that she had it. She actually claimed that she gave it to Rudy Giuliani. And what she was doing there was corrupting the evidence. I mean, she basically made it so that if it ever went to court, there's no way that Hunter Biden would have been convicted. And
it's the same thing that she did with a bunch of those briefs that Sidney Powell filed. Those were built up by Tori says also, and we looked at those the day that they were put out, and we were like, "What the hell?"
It was garbage.
Yeah, it was crazy.
They were filed in the wrong jurisdiction. They could never have succeeded.
That's why. And then the news went out and said, "Oh, he's filed 60 cases and none of them went anywhere."
Right.
So then once the election happened, we saw all these different, Giuliani, all these people going, all of these different houses in states, right, to sit in front of the House of Representatives in said state, talking about the vote fraud and the machines and all this other stuff, only to lead to nothing.
Nothing. And the Ruby lady in Georgia, they've been able to successfully sue him. A number of other lawsuits have gone forward. The whole thing with Joe Altman, everything with all the PCAPs, that just fell apart completely. Altman had to admit all that was complete crap. Why you still got Marty Fanning out here running around trying to tell us that the Everett scorecard is real?
Which is, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
It would be ridiculous if there weren't so much harm that was caused by
that is true.
And we thought it was good, but nothing ever happened. So all this money donated, allegedly, right? But nothing ever happened. Ask yourself why.
Right. Well, it's not alleged. I mean, there was, they told media, the Byrne and, the people on the America Project told the media in 2021 that they took in $50 million that year.
Patrick Byrne accused Sidney Powell of taking 70.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So he said somewhere between 40 and 70. And, and so they did take in a whole lot of money, and who knows where that money actually came from. And but I think that there are definitely some commonalities. It seems that there are several billionaires involved. I was talking to somebody last night who was there at this time with a lot of these players, and was actually, he knew Tory back in 2018. And he said that Palantir had something to do with it. And Palantir, of course, is owned by Peter Thiel. Palantir creates software that is used as spy software that's used by the FBI, CIA, DIA. It goes very, very deep. And there's a lot of other, extremely wealthy, high net worth people that just aren't on anybody's radar that were involved in all of this. And it's just, and it touches on kind of this Arabella-esque network kind of a thing, like you've been talking about, where money goes into 501c4s because 501c4s don't need to publish where the money came from. And so who knows where that money came from. And then it goes from 501c4s to other organizations. But there's another model too. And this is something that hasn't really been published really anywhere. There's been a little bit of discussion, but there's an organization that goes by Ziklag, Ziklag. And it actually formed. Josh Merritt told me that it was formed out of ASOG, and ASOG was the Allied Special Operations Group, which was Flynn's and Burns' team of like cyber guys. And it formed in 2018, and it is a group that includes. It was formed in large part by Al Hartman, who is Charlie Kirk's biggest booster, and he's Turning Point's biggest booster. It was also formed by the Green family that owns Hobby Lobby. And what they wanted to do with this was create an organization like what the Kochs did with, I think it's Americans for Prosperity, that they put billions into politics, but they wanted to do it not for libertarians like the Kochs did. They wanted to do it for Christian nationalism and promote the new apostolic reformation and the Seven Mountains mandate kind of stuff, which is making this the whole idea at its essence, making this a Christian nation. And which is unconstitutional and unbiblical, and every time that it has ever been attempted in the last 2,000 years, it has only ever resulted in crushing tyranny and genocide, because that's all that it can do.
So if you wanna, can you give me full screen real quick? I'm gonna give you an admission. You ready?
Sure. Yeah.
Give me full screen real quick, and you're gonna see an admission. Here you go.
Not hearing it there, Jeff.
Yeah.
We don't have any audio.
You don't have any audio?
No.
Huh. I don't know why. That's weird. Okay. Anyways, he's saying we liked what Jeff and Shady did with Arabella Advisor. That's why we started the America Project, so we can do exactly what Arabella Advisor is doing, but for the good.
Yeah, and that was a great clip, and I think most of your audience has seen it. I've seen this. That was a fantastic catch. I think that was one of those timeless things that you guys got there. That's amazing,
because it so perfectly shows exactly what it is that they did. Like we were like, oh, what did you accomplish with the Arizona audit? Well, I'll tell you what they accomplished. They accomplished scaring the living daylights out of people, thinking that somehow the Republicans were going to come in and be able to like audit everybody's election. And so like every state passed laws that said that no independent organization can audit our election. So they effectively like put a bad taste in everybody's mouth for getting an election audited from an outside source. There's no reason that we can't have outside sources that are vetted that can come in and do a quick check on like to see if stuff is in order in an election. It's all on digital. There's no reason somebody can't do that. But now they scared the hell out of everybody. The only cyber ninjas was, we were like defending this dumb stuff to the left, and the left was like, you guys are a bunch of fools. And we're like, oh no, this is great.
Right. Yep. Because
they had us looked.
And we didn't want the alternative. We knew that there was something wrong with the election, which there was. But what we didn't know is that there was a ballot for every vote, and that there were these insurgents within our ranks that were telling us that it was all the machines, and we're believing it was the machines. Mm-hmm. And we're believing them. We didn't know that we were surrounded by and being dictated by a bunch of lying tyrants.
It's interesting you say that, because Q talked about the census, and that's how they did it. They did it with the census. They bring in illegals, they get residences, 750 illegals gives you a seat. I mean, mm-hmm. And so Q talked about that, and we overlooked it because we trusted those we thought we trusted the most. It's very interesting.
That's right. Yeah.
And it also, I think that one thing, talking about the ReAwaken tour, one thing that it did do was that it gave credence to a lot of these people that were running with these narratives about devolution and Insurrection Act, and Donald Trump is really the secret president, and the Derek Johnson stuff and all the executive orders. All of that was given a lot of air within the environment of the ReAwaken tour. Like, everybody was like getting out there acting like similar. It's kind of like what Ivan Raiklin is doing now, except it was light. They were doing it less. And we were all like, good things came from it during COVID and people getting good information and us getting information out. I'm not going to say that everything was wrong, but the way that they were driving people towards bad information was what the problem was.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
So you want to get into the Great ReAwaken tour. And so it started out with the Health Freedom. The first one was in Tulsa. That's where they're like, hey, you guys want to come have a booth? We'll get you a booth, blah, blah, blah. So that's where we started. And I'm actually kind of glad that we went to a lot of these shows, guys, because if we didn't, we would have lost a lot of people, I think, Shady.
Yeah, well, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to understand like where we ended up with it either.
Right. Well, I mean, you guys had a front row seat to it. I mean, you guys were literally backstage as this stuff was happening. You were there with all of those people.
Correct.
And there's a lot of, I think, there are a lot of conversations that happen only behind closed doors that you guys were probably deliberately boxed out of. But you still saw the players that were going behind those closed doors to have those conversations.
And the donors that were coming to the events, they would be hosting the donors and they would, like Byrne and Flynn would go off so that they could have private meetings with these other big people that were coming in. Meanwhile, they were out there, like holding out their basket, like, they're collecting, they're collecting, church blessings on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So what do you think, and anybody in the audience is more than welcome to chime in too. But what would you say were the biggest themes? Because they were definitely, these were a narrative dissemination, device. I mean, that's really what the ReAwaken tour events were, right? So what were some of the themes and narratives that they were promoting at these events?
Well, the biggest thing, obviously the voter integrity, right? For lack of a better term. Ivermectin, COVID, right? So in a lot of it, some of it was on spot and a lot of it wasn't, but it really seemed like a huge grift, really, more so than anything else. It seemed like money to me. And I don't know, Shady, I mean, we had, so like Brian Artist, Dr. Artist has been on our show many times. He was awesome. And then he went over and he says, oh, we're going to have a big thing and it's snake venom in the vaccines. So what? And then he starts calling Trump a Jesuit or whatever he started. It's weird that they try to gain your trust and then they flip you with this weird, stupid ass narrative. Shady, I mean, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, the Dr. Artist thing, he ended up over with Stu Peters and they made a documentary called Watch the Water, which was a Q phrase. And then, the Stu Peters doesn't know anything about anything to do with Q, but they utilize it as a marketing ploy. So what you started to notice is that the people with the ReAwaken tour that we're working with, they were using all these Q isms as their marketing plan.
And then they had Matrix and Shady there.
Right. Yeah, and we honestly, Scott, I swear, like much like what we've done to you with you these couple of broadcasts, you're asking us questions, we're answering. We want to talk about what happened to us. Like, how's it going? Like, what was the information you dug into? What does it really mean? Why do you talk about the bloodlines? What does that really mean? How does that connect to the Federal Reserve? How does that connect to the trust? How does that connect to the ancient lore or the ancient past or the times of Jesus? Like, how does any of this stuff connect historically? Those are the things we're excited to talk about. Those are the things that we felt like Q was highlighting. How did they get all the technology into Iran and North Korea? How did the uranium actually get there? Well, Q explained it. It went through Canada into the EU and then into Iran and then into North Korea. So we went with the intention.
Red Cross. I mean, it's all there in the.
We went with the intention to share this information. And when we got there, what we realized is nobody wanted this information. They already had their preconceived notions and they needed an environment to insert them. And we were really, the one time we did get on stage, we blew their minds. Like we blew their minds literally. And Flynn was sitting there like a lump on the log, didn't even look at us when we walked off that stage because in that 15 minutes, we went through everything, all about the election, all about Arabella, and even into the Metabiota and the Hunter Biden pandemic insurance, like in Ukraine. Like we undermined everything that nobody on that stage would talk about. And
everybody was taking notes. They were like crazy. we packed that. We
never got invited to speak again.
Never got invited again.
That was it.
That's amazing, because you didn't say anything that wasn't true. It
Nope.
wasn't because of that. In fact, the only thing it was is because you were going outside of the narratives.
Yeah. And well, who would
you
know
weren't
about
you weren't emotionally manipulating the audience. You were actually causing them to think. And when you start thinking,
Correct.
and you step back and you start reasoning and engage in logic, that's what they don't want. That's the antidote to the manipulation.
So who runs the
Caroline for
DTRA?
Congress?
DTRA, right? Who runs that? The Pentagon, right? Who would know about the DTRA and their deals with Meta Biota and Ukraine? General Flynn.
Of course. Yeah. That
He would know all about it.
Obama's DIA director. Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
And just so that you know, we were already just so that you know, we were already onto him, Scott, at the point, even though we hadn't come out and started talking about it, we were already onto him at this point. We already had put together this stuff about Arabella in the background, but we took very thorough advantage of our opportunity to get out there and say it to the audience, because we knew he wasn't going to be happy with it.
Sure. That's fascinating. That is really that's an interesting experience.
Right into the to the lion's den.
Right. So Caroline for Congress says that one of the things that they were talking about was that Trump was still POTUS, which is the whole devolution thing, and they were actually that was one of the common themes.
It is.
Wow.
It was. It absolutely was. A number of the people got up there and said that stupid stuff.
Yeah, like McKay, Scott McKay.
That I called you today, by the way.
You're Scott McKay now, Scott McMahon.
I announced on the show today. I was putting on Scott McKay's show tonight. And then Jeff's like, did you just say Scott McKay? I was like, no. He's like, yes, you did.
I gave him a lot of crap for you, Scott. You'd have been proud of me.
Up for you, dude. I was like, I'm your co-host, man.
Yeah, I don't think I even look like him. Yeah, I think we definitely don't have very much in common. Scott
no,
McKay,
you don't. You don't wear like a 6-inch riser in your shoes, right, sir?
Does he really?
So that's why Shady got that in his head, because we were talking about DeSantis, and he looks tall and he's wearing the riser, and then we remember meeting this guy McKay, and he wears these platform shoes, literally like Gene Simmons, and that's why you said McKay.
And it only makes him 5'8". Like, he's still like 4 inches shorter than me.
Oh, Lordy.
Hilarious.
But he listen, so it's funny and stuff, but Scott McKay was a cornerstone to the ReAwaken. He would usually headline it. He would end it whenever we were there. The guy had like a $1 million diesel pusher with like this massive trailer on the back of it with these $500,000 motorcycle. And he would run around with a tomahawk. Like, he was on the stage. He literally had a tomahawk, and he was acting like he was going to be like chopping the deep state's head off, like running around, like swinging it like a banshee. I'm like, what is this guy doing? Like, how can we possibly be nothing he said is real.
So I want to look quick, Shady. You mentioned us backstage, and this is the picture of like, if you can do that, Scott.
Yeah,
that's General Flynn, and we're just like, come on, let's get a picture, because we knew we didn't like him at that time. Okay. And we're like, let's get a pic. And he's like, I'm not going to look. Are we live?
Oh my gosh. So he didn't even look at the camera, like, deliberately.
No, he wouldn't even acknowledge us. He would sit there behind stage. People would come off stage and he would talk to them. Each one of them, we saw him do it to everybody. We came off stage. He looked like he looked through us. Mm-hmm. He did not want to acknowledge us. And he makes a comment today, like, you two guys for becoming whatever it is you became. Yeah, well, a real thorn in your side. That's what we became, and we're going to continue to be so.
Yeah.
Yeah, just by following the evidence where it leads, right?
That's it, man. I mean, I'm not making, and again, they try to say that this is Flynn hatred, and we need to tamp this down. I don't hate Flynn. I don't. You're not
like him.
There's not a human being on earth that you're going to trick me into hating. I'm not that. I actually know what I'm doing here. I'm not giving anybody else my power. They hate me. They hate Jeff. Their hate to us is the same as the left's hate to Trump. It feeds us. Right. We take it and we mock them as we remove their power from them, and they're answering to us every single day.
Right. I think the worst name that I've called them is Flintards.
And that's actually quite endearing.
It is pretty apt, but
it's like right there on the bus. It's licking the windows. It's almost got them clean.
Yeah. Script says Flynn is short. Does he?
He is short.
Yeah,
he needs platform shoes.
Maybe you could borrow Scott McKay's.
Yeah, Scott McKay had this huge Warhammer or Truth Hammer van or bus, like it was a Provost, wasn't it, Shady? It was a nice.
Yeah, it was a big diesel pusher. It was a massive bus.
And then he had a trailer, and he'd get out his little Harley and take pictures with the women,
the ladies. Scott McKay and the ladies.
Yeah. There's just, and I think part of it, so we're collecting evidence, but we're also collecting stories. And, ultimately, I think you guys, and that this is what journalism is telling stories. I mean, we want to make sure that the stories are true. We want to verify the facts, and we want to make sure that, we're focused on facts. But the stories themselves, especially when they're corroborated, are really important. And that's the way that evidence is shared in a courtroom as well, and so and along those lines, I think it's important to show, because the ReAwaken tour and Clay Clark never talked about his supposed faith before he started the ReAwaken tour. He never talked about it, and he said it was because, I was just focused on business, Okay, fine. But he never talked about Christianity. And the people that he brought in really show that this was not a legitimate Christian organization. And there are so many truly false prophets. I mean, false prophet is defined as someone who claims to be expressing prophet on behalf of God, and that prophecy ends up becoming false. And that is a sign that it was not of God. Prophecy is only really a prophecy if it comes true. Mm-hmm. And that's how we know it's from God. And I also, my personal belief is that the Bible, we have the completed word of God. We have no need for prophecy any further. I have no use at all for modern prophets personally. In my faith, and I'm not judging anybody else that's into that kind of thing, but that is my belief, and I think that is a biblically sound belief, and it keeps me out of a lot of trouble and from following. But along those lines, so he chose the people that were really running the Christian aspect, and they were running the baptisms, and they were doing, they were trying to create this revival kind of atmosphere at these ReAwaken tours, where at least initially were primarily Dave Scarlett, who calls himself Pastor Dave, even though he's never been to a Bible college, and he's never been ordained by a church, which, there's nothing in the Bible that says you need to go to Bible college, but there is the idea that you are not a pastor unless you've been sent by a church to be a pastor, approved by a church to be a pastor, and he never has been. And this is part of his testimonies. He claimed to have had a near-death experience because of botulism. I talked to somebody who traced that back to where he said he was and when he said he was when he had this botulism case. They even called hospitals. Could not verify a shred of it, that there were no recorded cases of botulism at that time in that state even. And so, there's real credible reason to not even believe this, but that
would have been documented.
Right. It would have been. And this is something, because he claimed that he died, and, that he actually was, physically dead, and, came back from death. But his wife was, and this, it's the strangest thing. His wife was a substitute special ed teacher in, I think it was in Ohio. But she actually had a 2-year-long affair with one of her special ed students who had autism. She had a baby with him when he was 17 years old. She was convicted, but she only spent 3 days in jail. Never went to prison, just spent 3 days in jail. Which, this is, and she doesn't have to register as a sex offender. It's the weirdest thing. It is, and he actually,
none of that makes sense.
And this is real. I mean, they went on the Steve Harvey show and talked about this.
I just reposted it on my X. If you guys want to see it, it's there. So ex-teacher who had student's baby sentenced. It's a former substitute teacher who became pregnant during an affair with a 17-year-old high school football player, was sentenced on Tuesday to 3 days in jail and 5 years of probation. A former substitute teacher who became pregnant during an affair with a 17-year-old high school football player, sentenced today, 3 days in jail and 5 years. Charlene Scarlett, 40, pled guilty May 11th to 5 felony charges, 3 counts of sexual battery and 2 counts of disseminating obscene materials to a juvenile. The charges carry a potential of 17 years in prison. Judge Dick Ambrose said he ordered the probation because Scarlett had no previous criminal record and has obligations as a mother. She has a 3-year-old son from the relationship and 2 other children with her husband. This court has no desire to punish the child who is innocent victim of this relationship. And the student at this time when this article was written is 22, was at suburban Strongfield High School when the relationship began with Scarlett, stayed together with the husband despite the affair. AP says they don't identify victims of sex offenders. But yeah, crazy.
It wouldn't have been the case if it had been the other way around.
Right. So, I mean, this is there was my mind just went blank. There was a guy that was closely connected with all of this, with the whole Flynn network. He was often on Clay Clark's show, Sean Fute. And there was recently a report about psychologically and emotionally manipulative behavior and abusive behavior by Sean Fute, and that was really good. But it's the same. The stories that I have heard about Dave Scarlett are very, very similar and very concerning. And because he's not a part of a church that can discipline him out of the church. He's not a part. There's no church organization that has any authority to say, no, this is not representative of Christianity, of Christ and his church. But I will say it, this is not his behavior. And what I have heard about his behavior from direct witnesses who have spent significant amount of time with him, he is not a Christian. Yeah, he can say whatever he wants, but he does not represent Christ and his church. This is the behavior, that the way that he treats other people is manipulative. One story that I heard is that, and I've begun to verify this, he received a $2.5 million donation from an older woman. It was a third of her net worth. And it was under the guise of doing revival meetings, that he would use this money for evangelistic revival meetings. He used it to buy his house. He used it to buy a house and a ranch in Texas. Every dollar of it went to his own house. And then he directed his personal security, his bodyguard, to keep that donor away from him because he didn't want to be held accountable.
Wow. It's funny too. I want to just address some of the comments. Everybody's like, Steve Harvey has P. Diddy. Well, you know what? Pastor Scarlett's wife is a proven pedo. Okay. All right. You can't prove we can prove. So, look, when we find information, don't attack the person that gives it. Maybe so. Maybe he does. But we can prove that Pastor Scarlett's wife is a pedophile.
It's literally
convicted in court. She's convicted in court.
Yes, that is the marker.
You guys got to lighten up a little bit. I love you guys.
Well, and so here's another one, and this is another one of the false prophets. Goes by Amanda Grace, and and Amanda Grace is worth a minimum of. I asked AI what this person's net worth is. It's a minimum of $10 million. And I will be reporting more on this person in the future. And but I will say that it is a false prophet, and it is not who it appears to be. So, and there will be. I'm working on verifying more of that, and there will be more. But this
is she related to Larry Loomer?
Oh,
they look very similar. What?
Maybe his brother, right?
Here we go.
So, so there's a lot more to this story, and it's not just that you look at Mel K, you look at
Mel K was a porn star actress,
right? Exactly. Turned false prophet. There's
Liz Crokin was on Branson's Island.
I'm sorry.
I said even Liz Crokin, she was on Branson's Island.
Oh wow!
It's like all these people, man. It's like they're content creators, quote unquote.
She went to Branson's Island to talk about herpes that gave her brain damage.
It's a long story, but to make it short,
True.
I can't.
It's true. Now
we can't embellish that. Like, how do you make that up?
Yeah. And I just want to tell you real quick, I want to read something to you. Beware of false prophets. I am not a prophet. You are not a prophet. We are not prophets. Focus on the mission. Q.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
We're not prophets. Q is not a prophet. This is not prophecy. This is not like trying to resurrect people from the dead like JFK Jr. This is about the truth, and it's about not talking about things you can't prove, Scott. You know, like this is the problem that we have. We have a bunch of people that think they know things, but they never went to look to see if they could prove that it was true. Yeah. And it's a really inconvenient thing to do, to take your time and to go and to see if you can prove what it is you're trying to say in a way to where someone else can understand that. That takes effort. That's literally what we're trying to do. We feel like that's what Q trained us to do. And we feel like whenever we got involved with the ReAwaken tour, that they were doing something completely different. We didn't feel like that what they were doing was sticking to a truthful perspective, that they were embellishing, that they were over exaggerating, that they were making things up out of thin air a lot of the times so that they could generate hype. You know, they had these people out there that were making billboards and doing all these different things. You know, the next thing you know, like they have all these, and the guy's like telling us about how the earth is flat. Like, oh God, give me a break. He's like, oh, we're going on tour around the country with all these flat earthers to like do billboards for General Flynn and ReAwaken. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was crazy too. And
that
those
was crazy.
people were on our show. All of these people have been on our show.
Yeah, I mean, banners for freedom, like banners for flat earth. Oh my God.
It's amazing. I often text you guys or message you guys. Has this person been on your show? Yep. And it is.
All right, so here it is. This is, let me just repost it so I can bring it up for you, Scott. Okay, let me just repost it. So I'm reposting stuff that I'm talking about on the show in the matrix with 3x's.com. Don't forget to get over to Shady Groove with 3o's.com. And don't forget to go to at Bigger Truth on X as well. So here it is. This is it right here. So thank you, Sir Richard Branson. I'm humbled and honored. This is LizCroken.com. I'm humbled and honored that I was invited to Richard Branson's exclusive leadership event on his private island for people he believes are changing the world. It's nice to be recognized for the work I'm doing to spread STDs. Oh, wait, awareness about STDs and sexual assaults by someone so inspirational. This is October 1st.
Oh my gosh.
Later
she also stumped for Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm. And she told us that somebody had hacked her website, but that's still there.
Still there.
Wow.
So it's repeating. And I'd like to just add a little bit more to take it a little deeper. Think about Muslim Brotherhood. Think about Laura Logan. What happened to her way back in the Arab Spring? All of this stuff that happened in Egypt was connected to these same people at the center. Flynn has to do with this. McChrystal has to do with this. These generals that were in the field during that, Laura Logan has built her whole career off of what happened to her. The Muslim Brotherhood is associated with AWAN, that is associated with the whole IT network that was compromising Congress. This is another whole layer of stuff that
Q coming soon too.
That Q explained. And that's going on in the background that nobody's really seeing. But again, you have to understand blackmail. The mafia doesn't act like your family, guys. Like, the mafia is different than the way your family acts. Whenever you do something wrong in the mafia, you get punished. Whenever somebody calls on you to do something that you owe a favor for, you do it. There's no I'm sorry. There's no I'm not going to. That is a cult, just like what Scott is characterizing it as. And what we discovered at ReAwaken was that was a cult also.
Yep. Since we've used that word, let me find it here.
It matches.
I had Laura Logan's boobs in my jacket.
He put them in there, and then she walked away. She's like, "Oh my God, I left them in there." She had to go back and get them.
It smelled like it smelled like pee and alcohol.
Oh, no, don't.
He already did.
You can't put that one back.
Illusion away, doesn't it?
Personal experience. So when she was at the ReAwaken tour, she came in late and they had a tent outside, and she's like dressing, and she says, I got to go to the bathroom. She stuck her ass out the tent and pissed all over the floor.
Literally at the event. She didn't need to find a bathroom.
And she's hammered half the time.
Yeah. So let me just pull up. I think this is a valuable little graphic here.
Yep.
Warning signs of a cult. Number 1, the leader is always right.
True.
Number 2, criticism of the leader or questioning the leader is considered persecution. I've been told just in the last 24 hours that I was sitting because I was criticizing Flynn. Number 3, anything the leader does is justified, no matter how harmful it may be. Do any of these things sound familiar so far? Number 4, the leader is the only source of the truth. Everybody else is lying. Of course.
Yep.
It's all lies. That's one of their biggest.
Everything's a lie. Even though you can prove it, it's still a lie. Democrats tell you.
And Lucas wears red shoes.
Democrats are the best at like looking at something and still pretending it doesn't exist.
Yep.
And I wear red shoes, Scott. Okay.
It's true.
Number 5, followers must be blindly devoted to the leader and never question him. Thou shalt not question General Flynn.
Yes.
And
that was one of them.
If you do, you get blocked. And I've got that. Somebody said, I asked him about this, and he blocked me right away. Boom.
Right.
Yep. As soon as you ask him, you see,
Yep. And number 6, of course, and this is one of the most frustrating ones for those that are outside of the cult, trying to plead with and, just trying to negotiate because we care for the people that are stuck in it. The number 6, the members won't recognize that they belong to a cult.
Yeah.
And, and I think that's in 6 points, that's a very accurate and succinct summary there. And that's what they do, though. That is the intent. And when you go back to Mind War, which is, we're coming full circle here, you go back to Mind War with Aquino, and then you go to, I'm going to be doing a show later this week about a 2012 white paper that was published by the DIA right after Flynn became the DIA director. He wrote the preface to it, and it is full of, it's basically bringing Mind War to the 21st century. It's scientific paper after scientific paper, all combined together, so 300 pages, and they talk about specifically scientifically how to map the consciousness and the mind of a person or a group of people, how to profile people genetically, chemically, and in terms of how susceptible they are to being indoctrinated and radicalized to the point of violence. It is so shocking. This is the ethos of Flynn. This is what he's been doing. This is what he did with the ReAwaken tour. This is what he did with the Health and Freedom movement. It's what he did with the election integrity movement. It's what he has done within state GOPs, which, by the way, I think that's a big part of the reason why Flynn actually Trump endorsed Flynn's book, is to try as an act of diplomacy, at least in part, to keep these state parties together, because I know that Trump knows what's happening within these state parties. And it's really bad. And they are working very hard already and overtly to turn the state parties against Trump. And so he's trying to hold this thing together. And, it's really bad. So, and it's also, you mentioned Little Flower Advisory Board. I think that it has something to do with the whole, exposing of satanic ritual abuse and everything that they talk about, and child trafficking and all of that. I think that that's a part of that as well, that they're
normalization.
Yeah, and they're infiltrating and taking over that movement in order to take it down. It's like a Trojan horse. It's a wrap-up smear. There's different, however you want to call it. But no matter what it is, it's destructive, and it's taking us down from within.
The unpopular opinion is that they are protecting. The unpopular opinion is that the generals are built to protect the networks. The networks are protected. It's just like you would think of in Vietnam, where they're protecting the routes of delivering the supply lines. Who is in charge of protecting the route? That's what you're doing. That's what these generals are doing. That's what they're all doing. That's why he got America's future. And that's why he has access to all these 501c4s, because they're utilizing the battlefield and protecting the trafficking lanes. As long as they keep your nosy ass out of that trafficking lane, you don't know what's happening.
Yeah. And look at, like you were talking about, Flynn's, going to ties to the Intel group with the Quino and the rest at Fort Bragg. They loved that video with the ghost. That's not a good video, guys.
No.
I took that apart. Symbolism will be their downfall. Well, this is it. I'll repost that thread, but if you look at the symbolism within that video and what it actually represents, and there's this one picture of somebody looking into the light, and it looks like it's General Flynn from the back in that video. It's creepy. It's creepy, crawly, scary. Ugh.
It is.
And what is Flynn's movie called? Into the Light, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With Mike Smith, who I've got pictures of. Mike Smith used us with Crokin to get cued
with the Out of Shadows movie.
Wow. I remember when that little clip, that the video came out, that was long before I started looking into any of this stuff. And even then it made me sick to my stomach. Like it had this like deeply twisted, and there's something spiritual even about it. Like it's anti-spiritual. It's sick stuff. And because and I think it's what I said earlier, it's lust for hearts and minds.
Yeah.
And I think normal people can't understand how sick that is. And that's the reason why we fall for it.
Yeah, and people understand psychological operations in general. Shady, go ahead.
And truly, like the ground had been prepared with Alex Jones. Alex Jones prepared all this stuff that's coming out from Flynn's and everything. Like it's like it was like a softening of the population for this stuff, because this is exactly where it sends your friends and family. It sends them into an area of life where they can't connect to anybody. And that's the isolation point. And if you understand anything about mind control or MK Ultra or any of this stuff, whenever you're very, very young, that's exactly what they do to the children. They isolate them away. They never show them anything that's good. The only thing that is good that the child can see is something that comes from its handler. That's the exact same model that you're seeing out here in society. And that's the reason that General Flynn gets so animated, and he's over here worried about what we're saying whenever he's got all these people. He's supposed to be leading this horde of minions. And also, what you were talking about, Scott, earlier, the McChrystal bots and the whole network that they built that's the backbone of that. The DARPA thing that you were, like that's literally what they were doing. This is, the 9/11 was about being able to psychologically operate against the American people. That's what the whole thing was about. It wasn't a bunch of guys in caves that knocked down our buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is real quick. This is the picture I'm referring to. If you want to just make that big real quick, it could allegedly be Aquino, but look at the different part. Look at the ears; they're a lot bigger. Flynn's got these big ears, and I've stood behind Flynn, and that's what he looks like, looking into the light. It's creepy. It's like the mantle being passed.
Yeah, it does have more of that. The part in the hair, and I can see that. Well, who knows? But so one final question: who do you think is above Flynn? Like, because I don't think that he's necessarily the mastermind. I think he is a mastermind when it comes to military intelligence and these processes and deceiving people on massive scale. But I think that he is, he has handlers. He's directed in various ways. Who do you think is directing him?
So, Clapper, Brennan, Obama, Susan Rice.
I think it's McChrystal.
I think it's all of them.
Because McChrystal was the mentor to him and Charlie, and he was they came up under McChrystal. Like whenever McChrystal was already functioning in Afghanistan, the whole Pat Tillman thing was about the time that General Flynn got to Afghanistan. And so to some degree, if you pay attention to McChrystal, you see that he is moving in tandem with Comey or with Clapper, with Brennan, like Jeff was saying, the intel community. So effectively, Flynn wants you to buy the idea that he somehow had some sort of falling out with General McChrystal that has absolutely no substance. There's no position. There's no thing. There's no dispute. There's nothing you can point to. Just all of a sudden, Flynn disagreed with his lifelong mentor and stepped away from him. And there's no animosity in public between them.
I think you got a point, but here's why I think, and it has to do, and I'll break it here. It has to do with Flynn's new book. Okay. It's the first chapter is called Razor's Edge, and it says the coup started in the Oval Office. That's the first chapter, first little words. Now, it said that he met with Susan Rice multiple times over many weeks. Anons want Red Bull. That was the passing of the baton. What people don't realize is I didn't know that there was a meeting at Trump Tower. And guess who it was? It was Flynn, Clapper, Comey, and Rogers. Okay. And then we had, the Susan Rice part was also sketch. But if you remember this is, you can leave it single because it only fits one. This is James Comey treason. That is a tower. Could that be Trump Tower? Could this John Brennan treason be Trump Tower? We thought it was the Twin Towers, but maybe it's just Trump Tower. Did you know that Clapper, Brennan, Comey, and Flynn were all at Trump Tower along with Rogers? No. So now we have some more information to look at. So I have a feeling it goes all the way up to what Shady's saying, McChrystal being one of the generals, all the way up to Hillary Clinton and Barack Hussein Obama.
The globalists, the globalist controllers, the people that are currently, we do not know who is currently specifically in control of the assets, the monopoly that is the quote unquote the Fed. But what we can clearly see is Jerome Powell is working against Donald Trump. And all of the minions that are with Jerome Powell are of the ilk that we were just mentioning, the intel ilk.
Yeah. Well, I think that what you just said, it's a public-private partnership that is global. And I think CCP is involved. There's foreign intelligence involved. Yeah.
Mil-Civ Alliance. Yep. Military Civilian Alliance. Right. That is against us.
Well, look at Bijan Kian, who was on the board of directors for the Flynn Intel Group. He was the one that kind of arranged for the whole Turkey thing.
That's why I'm the POS, is because I said, how convenient.
Whenever they released him. That's who we were talking about earlier. Whenever I said they released the case, well, that guy was already convicted. Like he had been convicted by a jury of his peers, and the judge came and says, "Oh no, you just walk on out of here."
That's how convenient. He
says it's how convenient, and then he's a POS.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and why wasn't Flynn even indicted on that? I mean,
that's
he was
a great question. That's one of our questions.
He was, Bijan Kian was the intermediary. Mm-hmm. Flynn himself was the principal.
Correct.
I mean, he's the one that got paid.
That's correct.
He is the one that needed to file as a foreign agent.
Here's what I think it is. I think he's an FBI agent or, intel asset wanting to get people in trouble, but wanting to get things done for them through other people. Patsies.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't it Enrique that went to prison? Huh. Yeah. Wasn't it Jake Lang that actually went to prison?
Yeah. And they both picked up the soap.
Right. No, thanks.
Come to your own conclusions.
and Bijan Kian, though, and because you talked about the Fed, Bijan Kian was on the board of directors for the Export-Import Bank, which is kind of like the credit arm for the Fed.
Correct.
Extremely powerful person. So.
That's exactly right. And so, whenever we talk about who's in control of all of these different things, what we understand and what Cube made sure that we all understood was that it's the economy. Everything is relevant to the economy. Everything is relevant to the financial instruments, and all of these companies, and the monopoly that is the Fed is a massive financial instrument that is attacking the entity that it's supposedly there to support, which is this country.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Our people. They're charging us. They're charging you interest on money that your family put in there, Scott. Yeah. Your family put money into the Fed, and now you're out here paying interest on the real money that they put in. The math ain't mathing.
What's also interesting
is what inflation is. Right?
When Trump wrote that letter with all the Federal Reserve banks, that's a Q proof.
It is a Q proof. And it matched the timestamp.
It's all happening now, Scott, because it couldn't happen in 2020. It's amazing. Wow. And I know you didn't follow Q, and that's okay. Yeah, but at least you're not coming at us like the Flintards.
Well, I mean, at least he's given not only that, but he's given us respect to realize that he hears what we're saying, and then he's like, okay, well, they're not just telling me that because they want to say something. They're telling me that because that's what they found. If Scott were to come to us and say, listen, Shannon, I know you said this, but this is showing what you said was completely off. I would read what you're showing me, and I would understand and move forward together. Like, it's not like these people act like we're stuck on something. They're the one. They're stuck on stupid.
Yeah,
we're free of it.
And I don't need anybody to believe in Q, but what we dug up because of Q is pretty fascinating, guys.
And we're a riot. Aren't we?
Well, I've had a lot of fun with you guys, and hopefully our audience has had fun with us too.
I don't think we really went into the meat of the matter, though, Scott. I mean, we didn't really talk too much about the Thrive Time, but one statement on that is that we kept asking, Clay, like, we want to speak. We want to speak. Oh, no, we can't, but you can have a booth. We want to speak. They would never allow us to speak. When we went to Tulsa, we were ignored for the first maybe 5-6 guests until they realized that we were good. And then they started bringing everybody through. CJ, one of the handlers there, was like saying, you got to go to the MG show. You got to get interviewed by these guys. And they kept throwing us. And then we were like the stars of the media pool at all of their events. In fact, when Brighteon had a booth, they wanted us to man their booth. Shady, remember all that? I mean, we were like the stars in the media. Cool.
Nobody wanted to talk to anybody else because they were just a bore.
Yeah.
Well, and in my head, whoops, wrong one. So, one thing that the majority of these people have in common is that they are paying clients of Clay Clark. Yeah. And this is something that I've been told down by a couple whistleblowers who have been and are within this whole organization. And the estimates that I've heard is as many as 80% of the speakers at the ReAwaken Tour events are paying clients of Clay Clark. And the agreement that he has with them is that they pay like $1,700 a month. It's expensive.
What?
Plus a percentage of their profits.
Mm-hmm. And he advises their business.
And part of what they get for that is the privilege of going up on stage and sharing whatever message they're being told to share, and then they get to meet with Flynn and all of these people. So
yeah, no wonder they didn't let us.
Flynn's a hero. Stop.
I wasn't paying him for that.
and that really, I think that's a pretty big bombshell.
And Flynn got $30,000 a pop too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we heard. That he was getting $30,000 for each one.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that same number as well. So, yeah, there was a lot of Clay Clark, claimed that he wasn't making any money on the events, and but he was making a lot of money from his consulting clients.
So he told you the truth, kind of, then,
right?
And just to throw this,
so it wasn't the event; it was
right. And to throw this out there so people realize that every the main. The main point, the main goal of any good intel operation is to have everything coming through one source.
Right.
And every single person that ever went to any Thrive Time show got a ticket through Clay's phone. He's got the whole network on his phone.
Right.
Every single person.
Have you met my dog Raisin?
That's Raisin, like Raisin Cane.
Does
your dog have multiple personality?
He does.
Yes, he does.
Don't you keep changing that dog's
now
name?
takes the Flynn.
Isn't he cute, guys? Check him out, guys. There he is.
He started off as Flynn, and now he takes one. Look at that boy. Oh, he looks so adorable. He's
hi, everybody.
What's up, buddy? What's up, Raisin?
He is very cute.
He doesn't look like a box of Kellogg's.
Yeah.
We called him Kellogg for a minute.
Oh man, that's Raisin, right, buddy? Good boy. Well, Scott,
I always feel like we're just scratching the surface by the time we're done, but this was a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
We'll come back.
Thank you. Don't forget, subscribe to Bigger Truth. Thank you for you got some monthly subscribers here on Rumble. You got some donations. Thank you all. I think Veteran RN subscribe to you monthly over there. Guys, keep supporting. Keep supporting independent media. We love you, Scott. Thank you so much. Shady, you're all right.
I love you guys too. Thank you all.
He saw Raisin. He came up. He's like, I gotta come see you, Dad.
He's a cutie too.
Guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Until next time.
God bless her.
All right. God bless you.